There was a question, for those of you that watch Pisser's channel, about the FLUX CORE wired MIG welders. I'm not a body man, I was a mechanic, but I have both actually. I have a FLUX CORE MIG welder, a Miller, that I bought when the 110 volt MIG welders first came out back in the 80s. And I have a 110 volt Lincoln, which I run on gas. They could both run on gas or FLUX CORE. I have one set up. I have the Miller, which is set up for the flux wire, and the other one's set up for gas. And what I do with them is the FLUX CORE wire works really good outside. That's where I like to use it. When I was racing, it's the one I carried in the race car trailer. In case you had to do repairs, you know, when I was ice racing, you're out on frozen lakes and that, and it's always windy. And gas, shield gas, is just going to blow away if you're doing emergency repairs or something. So I ran the flux wire for that, and it was good. It was good for that. It's definitely not as good a weld as the wire with the shield gas. And it's also, for sheet metal it's good. If you're doing any structural, forget it. It's just not strong enough. I used to use it to tack weld my roll cage together. And then I would use actually a 220 volt MIG welder at a friend's place to do the final welds. Because I wouldn't even trust the 110 volt wire with gas to do a roll cage. I want better penetration. A couple of the issues you have with the FLUX CORE is the fact that it has the slag on it. It shoots a bunch of balls of little crap all over the place that you have to clean up. The welds aren't pretty. Yeah, they will hold for sheet metal work. I bought mine initially because I'm having a shit for brains moment, SFB as I call it. Initially I bought it because it was a 110 volt welder, and my garage at the time was only wired for 110, and there's no way to split the circuits or anything to get 220 out of it. And it happened to be a FLUX CORE wire setup that could be converted, and I just left it FLUX CORE, which saved me a little bit of money. I don't know what it's like in the States, but up here in Canada, and I'm up in central, or you know, they call central Canada Ontario, but actually the center of Canada is in about 5 miles east of me in Manitoba here, the longitudinal center of Canada. It's about 5 miles, so I'm about 5 miles inside the west. So I'm basically equal distant from the farthest reaches of Canada in either direction. The flux wire worked good, and I couldn't afford to convert at the time. But what we found was, to get a tank here, you had to get a contract, which is so much a year, and then you pay so much a fill. And it didn't pay for me to do it that route unless I used at least 4 tanks of gas as shield gas a year. Then on the 4th tank, I would start saving money. Well, I don't do enough welding to go through 4 tanks a year because it's only a hobby thing that I use it for. And even when I was racing, I would only go through 2, maybe 3 if I had a real busy season repairing the car. So it was cheaper for me to buy the bottle, and then I pay a little bit different price for the gas. So the bottle, I can't remember up here, it was a couple $100. but I own not that specific bottle, but I own the rights to one bottle. So even when it expires, I can take it in and get it exchanged. And that's all I do when I get it filled. I just drop it off at the shop, I pay for the gas, and I get the gas back. So, that's what I do, is I do it that way. And fill, because I got a slightly larger bottle. Actually, I'll walk in and I'll show you here. The cost to fill my bottle, as well, we call it filling, is about $80, and it'll last for about 7 out of 70 or 80% of a roll of 10 pounds of wire. Okay, so this is the Lincoln welder I use. Okay, this one, it's an SP135 Plus. And I'm not endorsing any particular make. My other one is a Miller. This, it just happens to be, this is the one I have. Okay, I just had a new tank. I just picked it up, and I don't know if you can see how much is left there. Turn an extra light on, maybe I get a little more lighting in there. But maybe you can see how much wire is left on that spool. Not very much. And that spool was changed when I put the last tank on. And I'm using what they call the C17 mixed gas. I don't know what the percentages are. Carbon dioxide inert gas mixture. So that's what I use. And it'll last for almost a roll of wire, maybe half. I don't know. I can't remember, because I usually only go through right now. For the last while, I've only had to fill it every 2 or 3 years, because I hadn't been doing very much on the cars at all. So, if I had a preference, I would go with the gas. It does a much better weld. You also have to, with welding, flux core versus the solid core wire, or the solid wire with the shield gas, is actually with the wire and shield gas, you usually do a push motion, and then the gas stays out and kind of keeps over where you're welding. With the flux core wire, you actually you draw the weld back, because the slag, as it dries, it's working just like an arc welder. It's creating a slag over top to stop the oxygen getting to the molten metal. That's what it's doing. It's working like the flux on a welding rod. So I would rather go with the gas than a flux wire. If you're doing it occasionally, I think you're almost always going to be better off buying a tank, unless you're doing it for a living. If you're just doing it at home, the welding shop that sells you the gas will likely be able to tell you how many times it'll take you to recoup the cost of the contract. I pay a little bit more for filling than they do, but the contract, I can't remember what your contract is. It's $125 a year versus the $200 I paid for the tank. So in the long run, for me, it's cheaper to own the tank than it is to have a contract. If you have the option. But like I say, the price structures will be different wherever you are. Kind of all over the map on this video. And I'm going to shut you off because I'm screwed up enough right now with my fatigue and my MS that I'm having to concentrate too much on walking to be able to talk. Yay. Anyway, have a good one, and I hope that little bit of information helps. And have a good one.